Hey, welcome to Your Shorters Prepping. I'm your host, Greg. Thank you for being with me on all of 2024 and prior years. I know I have some long-term subscribers, and I certainly do thank you for sticking with me. Looking forward to 2025, living within my means because there is a debt crisis that is about to burst, and it is going to be a tidal wave that could drag everyone down. Jimmy Carter, the president, passed away at the age of 100. Of course, the press is idolizing him like they did when they used the propaganda networks to put him in office, making him some sort of miracle worker, and he was the complete opposite, just like Joe Biden is today. I grew up during those times, got married during those times, and let me tell you something. When Jimmy Carter was president, and here's the truth, because I know a lot of you are the same age as me, you remember exactly how awful, how downtrodden most of America was, listening to the propaganda network stick up for this buffoon like they are for Biden right now while we were all suffering. Wages were extremely low. I think during that time I was working in a grocery store going to college at the same time. I think I was making like two and a nickel, two and a quarter, somewhere around there, $2.50 an hour, plus paying for school. And it was extremely, extremely tough to make ends meet. I was living at home with mom and dad, going to school, working. And even then, even though they were professionals and we were middle class by every sense of the word, it was still tough going. Gasoline prices were on the rise. Cars, everything was going up. Everything was going up except our wages. And this buffoon in office had no answers for anybody except more propaganda. Brzezinski is National Security Advisor, Mika's father of Morning Joe, bobblehead Mika. That was her father, and he was wrong on every foreign policy decision he ever advised Carter to do. Carter hated the military, even though he was a naval officer. He absolutely decimated our military, and he was an apologist for America's greatness. Don't be fooled that he was a submarine commander. He hated the military, and he showed it after he got into office. He believed everybody should own a house when they couldn't afford it, just like what happened in 2008 crash. Jimmy Carter was a spender. He was not a thrifty man or anything else like that. I remember after I moved to Alaska, I was working in a grocery store, and the economy was so bad, one week I may get 40 hours, and the next week I may have 10. And I was looking for another job to supplement that. And believe me, in the community I was at, unemployment was at all-time high, and jobs were scarce as hen's teeth trying to find one. It was extremely rough going. Hamburger at $2.50 an hour before I moved to Alaska. I had to work 2 hours to buy a package of hamburger. Milk had gone up. Everything had gone up except our wages. So when it came time to eat, there was a lot of macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, potatoes, rice, and beans. Cut out buying pop because that was all, had gone up. Snack chips had gone up. Bread used to be 10 cents, 25 cents a loaf. It was now 79 cents a loaf and going up. It was ridiculous. Things were just blowing up left and right. And then they introduced generic canned goods to offset the name brands that had gone up to $1.50, $2 a can. So they brought in generic label canned goods under President Carter to offset the high cost. And this was white label, black lettering, and it was second and third choice. So when you opened up a can of green beans, and I'm sure many of you that bought that remember what it was like. It was surprise in the can. What were the green beans we were going to get, and how many pieces of stems was still connected to those green beans. But you had to do what you had to do to make ends meet. A can of peas You may get little BB-sized peas, or you may get marbles. You never know. Corn could be field corn. It could be sweet corn. It could be baby corn. You got what you got. And you paid that price so you could live on that. Meat became a luxury unless you like Spam or other stuff that was similar in the canned meat. Roast beef and gravy over homemade mashed potatoes became a staple. Popcorn became a staple. Kraft macaroni and cheese used to be 10 for $1. Now it was 5 for $1. Sugar used to be 99 cents for a 5-pound bag. Now it was $2. So everything went ballistic. Buying new clothes went up dramatically. Gasoline went up dramatically. Everything was going up. And that doofus in the White House, all he could do is say, well, I'm trying to do my best, you know. Hey, how about that Billy Beer? His brother, an alcoholic. Under President Carter, propped up by the news networks that lost all credibility because they hated Nixon, they couldn't stand for it, made fun of him tripping and stumbling just like Biden, but they hated them. They brought up this hillbilly hick with his socialist ideas. So no, President Carter was absolutely the worst president. I remember when I got married up in Alaska, and rent for a single bedroom apartment in Alaska was $700 a month, and I was struggling to pay for that. Working every job that came down the pike and all this kind of stuff. And then the missus said she was expecting a baby, so that put a lot more pressure on me to buy my first home. Interest rates, mortgage interest rates, all-time high, 19%. Rent was ballistic. So I got into a government program where it was farm home loans based on your income. My first house was 19% interest, and it was close to $1,200 a month. And I was struggling, working 2 jobs to take care of the missus who was expecting our first child. It was a struggle. Believe me, it was really tough. Spam, eggs, bacon on a rarity, mashed potatoes, commonplace, roast beef, canned roast beef, tuna fish, peanut butter and jelly, anything to make ends meet. Couldn't have a credit card. The interest rate was way too high, and I couldn't pay it. People's credit was going in the tank. Foreclosures were prominent, just like it's coming in 2008 and just like it's coming now. We learned to live within our means, and it was skinny. Finally, when that buffoon was voted out of office, and I can't understand how I lost. He lost in a landslide to Reagan because Reagan promised jobs, an upturned economy, and return to decency and pride in America. It was 2 years into Reagan administration before the mortgage payment went from 19% interest down to 14% interest. And that was like a huge, gigantic raise I got because my payment went from $1,200 to $900. That was like a pay raise. I actually had a little bit of money to live instead of being strangled, eating dirt. Like so many Americans, we were never so glad to see that buffoon get out of office, just like now with Biden. But let me warn you something, friends. The credit card debt currently is surpassed at any time in previous years, even under that buffoon Carter. Couldn't stand that man. People were miserable, just like now. Everybody was putting stuff on credit card, never able to pay it off because credit card rates went from 9 to 10 to 15 to 23 to 30% interest, and people were going bankrupt, just like now. Foreclosures, all-time high back then, heading there now. Personal bankruptcies, all-time high. Credit card payments, delinquency rates, all-time high. It could come to an end in 2025 with a rolling crash. So live within your means. Trust me when I tell you I lived through Carter and it was absolutely miserable. And now we're surviving Biden, but it'll take at least 2 years under Trump to get things to where you can say, I can breathe again, if the collapse doesn't happen. So be prepared. Live within your budgets. Don't apply for any more credit cards. Only use the credit card you have in case of emergency and then pay it off. Forget the wish list. Forget the Christmas presents, birthday gifts, and everything else. We didn't have those during Carter, believe me. Take a lesson from an old fart like me and saying, live within your means. Carter was absolutely horrible back then, just like Biden is now. Good riddance to both of them. Thank you for liking and subscribing to Resource Prepping.